You say you want love. You say you're ready for something real. But if we strip away the soft language and look the truth in the face, what you want isn't love. You want to be liked. You want approval. You want to be seen, praised, validated. You want eyes on you, smiles, applause, silent admiration. You want to feel wanted, but without the risk of being known. And that's not love. That's survival. That's performance. That's addiction. Love does not flatter you. It confronts you. Love doesn't always make you feel good. Sometimes it breaks your illusions. It doesn't adapt itself to your ego. It holds a mirror to your soul and says, "This is who you are. Now show me who you're becoming." But to be liked? That's easy. You know the lines. You know how to be charming. You've learned how to read a room and shape-shift your voice until it fits what they want to hear. You've mastered the art of disappearing behind a likable version of yourself, hoping someone will finally love what isn't even real. And somewhere along the way you forgot who you were before the performance started. You smile when you're uncomfortable. You nod even when your boundaries are crossed. You laugh at what hurts. You flirt when you're lonely, not because it feels right, but because it gets you seen. Because deep down, being invisible terrifies you more than being false. And the world taught you to behave this way. Don't be too loud. Don't be too honest. Don't be too emotional. Be pleasant. Be safe. Be easy to love. And so you obeyed. You learned to hide your needs, shrink your voice, dim your light. You became the version of yourself that others could digest without choking. And you told yourself it was enough, that approval would be enough. But late at night, when it's just you in the silence, you feel it, that hollow ache, that haunting question. Why doesn't anyone really love me? But how can they? They've never met you. They've only met the mask, the polished, watered-down version, the agreeable one, the one who never says no. You've mistaken popularity for intimacy. You've mistaken being liked for being known. And now, no matter how many people praise you, you still feel alone, still feel unseen. Because attention is a sugar high. It gives you a rush, but it can't feed your soul. And yet you keep chasing it. You keep checking your phone. You keep tweaking yourself to get that little hit of "you matter." You keep walking into rooms wondering, do they like me? When the real question is, do they see me? And no, they don't. Because you've made sure of that. You've made yourself likable at the cost of being real. And here's the tragedy. You think your loneliness means you're unlovable. But what if it means you've abandoned yourself? What if love hasn't found you because it's been knocking at a door that doesn't open? Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you've traded that privilege for the comfort of approval. You say you're not afraid of love, but you are terrified of rejection. You're scared that if someone saw your anger, your fear, your sadness, they'd leave. But you've already left. You left yourself behind the moment you decided being liked was more important than being whole. And now you carry this quiet grief. A grief for all the things you've never said. All the times you've betrayed your own truth to stay in someone's favor. And it shows. In your anxiety. In your silence. In the way you keep hoping someone will love you enough to finally make you feel real. But that's not their job. It never was. Love is not applause. It is not convenience. It is not charm. It is truth. And the painful truth is this: you don't want love. You want to be liked, because being liked doesn't ask anything of you. Love demands you return to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you're not ready for that. Not yet. Being liked is a drug. A soft one. A silent one. It doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in slowly. One compliment here. One nod of approval there. A text reply. A heart emoji. A moment where you feel seen, even if it's not the real you they're looking at. And just like that, you're hooked. You start adjusting yourself without realizing it. You wear what gets noticed. You say what gets a laugh. You think twice before being honest, because honesty costs you attention. And deep down, you don't want to risk that. You don't want to risk being left behind. So you polish your edges. You choose comfort over confrontation. And you tell yourself it's okay, that this is connection. But it's not. It's dependency. Because the moment someone pulls back, the withdrawal hits. You replay every word you said. You ask yourself what you did wrong. You shrink with the silence. Your worth collapses under the weight of their disinterest. And that's when it becomes clear. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a transaction. Their attention for your compliance. Their approval for your performance. You never felt safe to just be. You only felt valuable when you were pleasing. And the scariest part is, you might not even know who you are without that feedback. You've tied your identity to being wanted. Being liked has become your mirror. And when it disappears, you go blind. You doubt yourself. You collapse inward. Because without someone liking you, you feel empty. But that emptiness isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that you've abandoned your center. That you've outsourced your self-worth to the emotional weather of other people. Jung warned us about this. About losing the self in the persona. The mask becomes so convincing that not only does the world believe it, you do too. You think you're the friendly one, the understanding one, the easy one. But behind that persona is resentment, rage, exhaustion, a quiet scream you've never let out. Because the truth is, being liked costs you your voice. And for what? A few smiles, a temporary seat at someone's table. You're starving in public and calling it connection. You're bleeding and calling it love. But ask yourself this. Why do you feel so drained after being around certain people? Why do you leave a conversation and suddenly feel like you've betrayed yourself? It's because you have. You've smiled through discomfort. You've nodded through disrespect. You've let people get too close to a version of you that doesn't exist, and it chips away at your soul, piece by piece, until you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. Not because you're a liar, but because you're lost. You're performing a self that keeps you safe. And safety is seductive when you've lived your whole life afraid of rejection. You learned early that being real was risky. Maybe you showed emotion once and got laughed at. Maybe you said what you needed and were met with silence. Maybe love was given to you in pieces only when you behaved. So now you live on scraps. Scraps of attention. Scraps of closeness. Scraps of connection. You don't ask for more because more feels dangerous. But let's be honest. How long can you keep starving? How long can you keep pretending that being liked is enough when your soul is aching to be held? There is a difference between being liked and being loved. Being liked is based on performance. Being loved requires presence. Being liked is conditional. Being loved is relational. Being liked fades the moment you stop entertaining. But love stays. Even when you're not charming. Even when you're messy. Even when you're raw. But here's the catch. Love only meets you at the level of truth you're willing to live. And if you're still living in a lie, if you're still performing to be accepted, then don't be surprised when love doesn't stay. Not because it doesn't want to, but because it can't breathe in places where truth is suffocated. So ask yourself what's really driving you. Is it love? Or is it the fear of being forgotten? The fear of being disliked? The fear of being too much for someone who never even knew the full weight of your soul? Because until you name the addiction, you won't be free from it. Until you stop chasing approval like oxygen, you will stay emotionally breathless, no matter how many people like you. And that's not living. That's emotional slavery. And you were not made for that. You were made to be seen, to be felt, to be met. But the path to that kind of love, it starts with giving up the performance, letting go of the crowd, turning away from the stage, and facing yourself alone, not to be liked, but to be whole. There comes a point where something inside you breaks. Not loudly, but quietly. A moment where you realize, no matter how many people like you, it never fills you. Not really. You've spent years collecting attention like currency, thinking it would one day turn into love, but it never does. It just builds a tower of shallow moments with no foundation. And the higher you go, the more unstable it gets. You smile, nod, impress, charm, adapt, until you're exhausted, until you don't even remember what your real voice sounds like. And here's the truth you've avoided. There is no performance that will make someone love you for who you are, if you're always hiding who that is. Love doesn't come to the character you play. It comes to the person underneath, the one you buried long ago. But that person, the real you, isn't polished. They're angry, lonely, imperfect, unfiltered. And you're terrified to show that, because somewhere along the way you believe that who you really are isn't enough, that love had to be earned by pleasing, that worth was something granted to you by someone else. And now here you are, liked, followed, praised, and starving. Not because you're unlovable, but because you never let yourself be loved, only displayed, only tolerated, only used as a mirror for other people's projections. And it shows. It shows in the way you panic when someone pulls away. It shows in the silence you can't sit with. It shows in the way your whole identity crumbles when you're not needed. You think you're afraid of rejection, but it's deeper than that. You're afraid of being real and having someone walk away. You'd rather be accepted for a lie than risk being abandoned for the truth. But let me say something that may sting. If someone loves a mask, the love isn't real. It doesn't touch you. It doesn't heal you. It only deepens the divide between who you are and who you pretend to be. And this is where the inner war begins. Because something inside you is tired of pretending. You feel it, don't you? That quiet voice that says stop. Stop performing. Stop pleasing. Stop shrinking. That voice is your truth, and it's angry, because you've silenced it for years in the name of belonging. And now your soul doesn't want to be liked anymore. It wants to be free. But freedom is painful when you've lived as a prisoner for so long. At first it feels like isolation, like losing everything, like standing in the ruins of the identity you built. You'll lose people. You'll disappoint them. You'll be called selfish, cold, difficult. But what they're really saying is this: I miss the version of you that didn't make me uncomfortable. And that's how you'll know you're getting closer to yourself. When people who only knew your mask start to pull away, it's not a loss. It's a clearing. It's a sacred unraveling. Jung once said that individuation, the process of becoming yourself, is not a comfortable journey. It's a confrontation with everything false. And when you step into that fire, the first thing that burns is your need to be liked. That's how it begins. You say no when you used to say yes. You stay silent when they expect you to perform. You walk away instead of begging to be chosen. You disappoint people, and you survive. You let someone misunderstand you, and you survive. You stop apologizing for who you are, and still you survive. And then something shifts. The silence you feared begins to feel like peace. The solitude you avoided begins to feel like clarity. You start to hear your own voice again. You start to feel real. Not in a dramatic way, but in a grounded way, in the way your body relaxes when you stop lying. And you'll realize being liked is nothing compared to being known. Being wanted is nothing compared to being met. You'll see that most of what you called love was just comfort. Most of what you chased was just echo. And most of what you gave away was never asked for by someone who could hold it. This is the death of the false self. The mask cracks. The performance ends. And what's left is you. Raw, honest, still unsure, but real. And that's the beginning of everything you've been looking for. Not the applause, not the praise, but the quiet power of no longer needing to be anything other than yourself. Because the moment you stop chasing love through approval is the moment you make space for something deeper, something slower, something rooted in truth. And that's where the real kind of love begins. But it cannot find you until you stop hiding, not behind beauty, not behind kindness, not behind control. It begins when you stop negotiating your soul just to feel wanted. It begins when you choose wholeness over likability, truth over charm, integrity over attention. It begins when you finally say, I would rather be alone and real than surrounded and hollow. And that is where you begin to return to yourself, not to the version they liked, but to the person you were before you ever felt the need to be anyone else. There comes a moment, quiet, steady, irreversible, when you stop needing to be liked, not because you've become cold or distant, but because something inside you has awakened. You've seen the truth. You've felt the emptiness of applause. You've tasted the loneliness that comes from being surrounded but unseen. And now you no longer want to live for attention. You want to live for alignment. You want your words to mean something, your silence to carry weight, your presence to be enough, even when no one claps for it. And this shift, it changes everything. You stop chasing texts. You stop bending to please. You stop shrinking your voice just to avoid discomfort. You don't need to be understood by everyone anymore. You don't need to be the favorite, the one who always smiles, the one who holds everything together. You start telling the truth, not for drama, not for attention, but because lying to yourself became unbearable. You start saying no, not with guilt, but with clarity. You stop explaining yourself to people who are only listening to judge. You stop performing vulnerability just to be relatable. You start becoming someone who walks differently, quieter, slower, deeper. And at first, it's disorienting. You lose people, the ones who liked the version of you that never challenged them, the ones who only stayed because you made things easy, the ones who mistook your silence for sweetness. You will feel the absence. But then something beautiful happens. In the space left behind by false connections, real ones begin to emerge. People who don't need you to perform. People who don't flinch when you speak your truth. People who can hold your grief without fixing it. People who aren't afraid of your depth. And most importantly, you become that person for yourself. You stop outsourcing your self-worth to strangers. You stop begging life to validate you. You stop running from the parts of you that feel too much. Instead, you sit with them. You listen. You bring the shame, the rage, the softness, the silence, all of it back home. You realize that love was never something you had to earn. It was something you had to return to. But that return requires death. The death of the mask. The death of the image. The death of the self you built to be liked. And in that death, something sacred is born. A self that no longer needs to be picked to feel worthy. A self that doesn't chase but chooses. A self that isn't afraid of being misunderstood, because being true is more important than being approved. You realize that love, real love, was never loud. It was never desperate. It was never a game. It was presence. It was truth. It was the ability to stand in your full humanity and say, I am not here to be liked. I am here to be whole. And if love finds me in that wholeness, it is welcome. But if not, I will not perform for it. I will not lose myself again, because I've been down that road, and all it gave me was a crowd that clapped for someone I no longer am. And now, I choose something different. I choose peace over praise, integrity over performance, depth over attention. I choose the kind of life that feels honest, even if it's quieter. I choose to love myself not as an idea, but as a commitment to show up every day without the costume, without the need to impress, without the hunger for validation. And this kind of self-love, this radical honesty, it changes how you move through the world. You no longer ask, do they like me? You ask, do I feel true in their presence? You no longer tolerate relationships that require you to hide. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You want less, but you want it to be real. And here's the quiet ending to the story. You stop craving the spotlight because you've made peace with the shadows. You stop chasing love because you've become a place where love can live. And one day, without warning, someone might come into your life, not dazzled by your shine, but drawn to your stillness. Not because you performed, but because you didn't. And in their presence, you won't feel the need to be anything other than yourself. That's when you'll know. You are no longer addicted to being liked. You are finally free to be loved.